And instead of just kind of what we'd say at the Pentagon, admiring the problem and talking about the problem from every different angle, we'd actually just lock ourselves in a room, kick out the media and Twitter and whatever, and just figure out how we do healthcare in a way that is worthy of the country that we all represent. So I'm ready to do that with anybody. I mean, literally anyone who wants to work on that. But in the meantime, I'm not going to take the Band-Aid away and say to people, yeah, sure, go ahead, just double your price of healthcare.
This may look like another policy debate about premium hikes and program flaws, but it's actually a stress test of whether American governance is capable of solving problems that affect real people's lives. What's really being tested here is whether Congress treats healthcare as a political weapon or as a national obligation tied to dignity, security, and economic stability. This raises broader questions about whether institutions designed to protect citizens still have the capacity or the will to act before crisis becomes catastrophe. In this video, we'll break down how this exchange exposes a deeper failure of leadership, why families are being forced into impossible choices, and whether our political system is prepared to confront reality instead of pretending debate is the same thing as progress.
That means you're at the end of your time here. It's almost over, and we're at the end of the dais. I wanted to ask a little bit, Mr. Lehman, I understand you're a farmer, you're a fellow Midwesterner. I'm from Michigan. I understand that you depend on the ACA or Obamacare. 25% of farmers across the country depend on it because they don't have, employer-provided insurance. And I also understand that your wife dealt with breast cancer.
Yes.
And I'm glad to hear she got past that. My mother had breast cancer when I was a young child. And I think the thing that people miss with the ACA and the fundamental thing that it did, and no one would say it was perfect. I don't know a single person who thinks that it's perfect. It's a Band-Aid on a broken system. But it required coverage for people with pre-existing conditions.
That's right.
From my own family, my mom had that cancer, breast cancer, double mastectomy and a lymphectomy at 31 years old. So when she didn't have employer-provided insurance and needed to go on the marketplace before Obamacare, they could just charge her whatever they wanted because she happened to have had this cancer. So my brother and I were in school. We didn't know. She went 5.5 years with no insurance, and then ultimately walked into an ER years later and was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And I think about
what happens here is the reminder that healthcare isn't theoretical. It's the difference between early intervention and tragedy. This matters because when institutions fail, families are forced into medical roulette. Delay care, absorb crushing costs, or hope luck replaces a functioning system. And it leads to a national reckoning. Either policymakers treat coverage as infrastructure for life stability, or the system continues rewarding profit structures over human survival.
Kind of preventive care, a doctor saying, hey, you had breast cancer really young, you should get genetic testing or have a hysterectomy. So these are real issues that affect real people in real ways. And again, Obamacare is far from perfect, but that guarantee that they can't gouge you because of what you happen to be born with or have, I think was a fundamental thing that I think most Americans believe in today. I understand that your plan, you have gotten notice that your plan is going to go up precipitously here.
Yes.
Can you tell us about what's about to happen? I mean, we're in December, January 1, this all changes. And then I want to just ask you how it affects, you get notice of this bill. How is it changing your own thinking about your own life and what you can and cannot do?
Yeah, we, as best as we can tell, in order to get a similar plan that we had in 2025, the cost for us to have that same plan in 2026 is going to more than double. That is an incredible cost for our family budget, for our farm budget. Farmers right now are trying to make all sorts of decisions because commodity prices are low, because of chaotic trade situation that we're in, higher input prices. We've experienced USDA services that have been curtailed at our local level and other places. All these things have made a real crisis for a lot of our farmers. So finding ways to deal with that, we just don't have too many options. Farmers will buy less equipment or not make the necessary upgrades in equipment that they need to. They'll look at their input supply.
What we're watching is economic vulnerability layered on top of healthcare vulnerability. This matters because when essential workers have to choose between financial stability and medical security, the system isn't just inefficient, it's structurally hostile to the people who feed the country. And it leads to a future where fewer young Americans enter critical industries because the price of participation is personal risk.
And they'll decide, what can we do to get through just this year, even though that means long-term soil health issues on our farm. It means negotiating with landlords and with bankers to try to find the best terms to deal with all of this, just to get a plan to put the crop in the ground.
Yeah, and I think, farmers I'm on the Ag Committee, farmers are under incredible stress. We have a big bailout package that's now being approved, and you don't bail out farmers when things are going right? It's a problem. I would note that Michigan farmers, we do specialty crops. We're not like Iowa, and we are excluded from that deal. So our farmers are really, small and medium-sized farmers are really suffering. I understand you're fifth generation or fourth generation farmer. What does it mean, for your kid? I mean, your family, are they thinking about farming? And how does healthcare, since you're not going to get employer-provided insurance if you're a farmer, how does that factor into a decision to have the next generation on the farm?
Well, not just for my family. I'm lucky enough that my son is taking steps and helping out on the farm a lot at the sixth generation on our farm. You have to be very smart to figure out the plan that can bring the next generation on the farm. And I'm not alone. I'm I'm 57 years old, 58 years old, and that is, 57 is the average age of the Iowa farmer.
This moment shows healthcare policy dictating who can build a future and who can't. It matters because when healthcare becomes a barrier to opportunity, it stops being simply a policy issue and becomes a gatekeeper of economic class and generational continuity. The long-term consequence is a shrinking pipeline of essential workers, destabilized rural communities, and deeper inequity.
Desperately need young and beginning farmers to come back to the ground. And we have a lot of innovative, driven, smart folks who want to farm. Making this investment so that there can be some security for young farmers, taking that risk to come to their farm, whether it's to feed their community or through local and regional foods, or whether it's to grow commodities on their family operation, that's an investment worth making. And that's where these making affordable health care available to that generation makes all the difference, whether you can encourage that next generation to come back to the farm.
Yeah, I think, we obviously have a big vote this week, and obviously it's a point of contention between Democrats and Republicans, but I've never seen an issue like healthcare where I don't know a single person who thinks it's going right? Patient, doctor, pharmacist, nurse, admin, assistant, every single person feels like we're paying too much for our healthcare, and it's screaming out for just some real significant change. And again, Obamacare was a Band-Aid on an open wound of millions and millions of people not having care. And I think it helped a lot of people get care, but it's not the long-term plan. And in another time, if Washington was healthy and we were engaging with each other, we would say, it doesn't matter what state we're from. Democrats and Republicans are hearing, on both sides of this dais, are hearing it is not working for people. And instead of just kind of what we'd say at the Pentagon, admiring the problem and talking about the problem from every different angle, would actually just lock ourselves in a room, kick out the media and Twitter and whatever, and just figure out how we do healthcare in a way that is worthy of the country that we all represent. So I'm ready to do that with anybody. I mean, literally anyone who wants to work on that. But in the meantime, I'm not going to take the Band-Aid away and say to people, yeah, sure, go ahead, just double your price of healthcare next year. So thank you for being here. Thank you to all the witnesses. I hope in another time we can actually, have a conversation, not admiring the problem of healthcare and talking about how bad it is, because it's bad, but actually doing our jobs up here and figuring out a solution. So thank you for your time, everybody. Appreciate it. Yield back.
So, Senators.
What happens here is a rare admission. Washington talks about problems instead of solving them, because talking is easier than governing. This matters because democracy relies on institutional competence. When leaders normalize paralysis, they normalize suffering. And it leads to the most critical question of all. If Congress cannot fix the most universal crisis Americans face, what does that say about its legitimacy as a governing body? This hearing wasn't just about premiums or policy provisions. It was a referendum on whether American governance is still capable of responsible action. Healthcare failure is not theoretical. It shapes economic survival, community stability, and generational opportunity. When leaders acknowledge the crisis but refuse to solve it, that's not gridlock. That's institutional negligence. Accountability matters because trust in democracy depends on competence, not slogans. If Congress continues admiring the problem instead of fixing it, the price will be paid by families, workers, and the very backbone of the country. This isn't a partisan test. It's a democratic one. And it demands courage, honesty, and real solutions, not excuses. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.